So, how did World War II actually start? Well, it wasn't just one single event. It was more like a domino effect, a whole chain of events that kicked off long, long before the first shots were even fired. We're going to unpack that whole story.
And devastating, that's almost an understatement. We're talking about a scale of destruction that is just, it's hard to even wrap your head around. I mean, entire cities were literally flattened. The world we live in right now, a lot of it was shaped in the fires of that war.
So that begs the question, right? What was that first domino? Where did it all go so wrong? To find out, we actually need to rewind the clock. We're going back a full 2 decades before the war even officially started. Okay, so here we are, it's 1919. World War I is finally over. The world's leaders are all gathered to sign what's supposed to be a peace treaty, the famous Treaty of Versailles. The problem is, this wasn't really a treaty of peace. You could almost call it a treaty of vengeance. And a lot of people say it's the very thing that planted the seeds for the next war. Yeah, the whole idea behind it, especially from the winners like France and Britain, was pretty simple and pretty brutal. They decided that one country, and one country alone, was to blame for everything: Germany. And they even wrote it down in one specific infamous part of the treaty. It's called Article 231, better known as the War Guilt Clause. This thing forced Germany to accept 100% of the blame for starting the war. For the German people, this was a deep, deep national humiliation. They were officially cast as the villains. And with the blame came the bill. A massive bill. Germany was ordered to pay reparations. And get this, in today's money, we're talking about something like $270 billion. It was such an insane amount that Germany only made the final payment in 2010. Yeah, 2010. Almost 100 years later. Just think about that. So as you can imagine, the economic fallout was just catastrophic. To try and pay this impossible debt, the government did the only thing it could. It just printed more money. And that led to something called hyperinflation. To give you an idea of how crazy things got, look at the price of bread. In 1922, a loaf cost 160 marks. Just 1 year later, that same loaf of bread cost 200 times billion marks. Your life savings could become worthless overnight. The economy wasn't just in trouble, it was completely shattered. So you've got this perfect storm brewing, right? People are economically desperate, and they feel a deep sense of national shame. This is the exact kind of environment where a new, radical, and dangerous kind of leader can rise. And that's exactly what happened with Adolf Hitler. By 1933, things got even worse. The Great Depression hit the world. And for Germany, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. We're talking 6 million people out of work. People were losing their homes. Kids were going hungry. They were absolutely desperate. They needed a solution, sure, but they also needed someone to blame. And wouldn't you know it, Hitler was right there to give them both. He was a master at tapping into that anger and fear. He used all this powerful propaganda to point the finger not outward, but inward, at so-called enemies within, like Jewish people and socialists. He promised to make Germany strong again, to restore its honor. And by 1933, the people were so desperate for a way out that they gave him enough power to make himself dictator. Now, at the very core of his whole plan was this one key idea, Lebensraum. In German, it means living space. But this wasn't just about getting back some lost territory. No, this was a deeply sinister racial ideology. It was the idea that Germany's supposedly superior, Aryan people needed more room to expand, to live, to thrive. And that one concept, it was going to be the justification for all the horror that was about to come. So once he has total power, Hitler doesn't wait around. He immediately starts tearing up the Treaty of Versailles piece by piece. It's like he's poking the bear, aggressively testing the other countries in Europe to see just how much he can get away with. And just look at how fast things escalate. In 1935, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, we have an air force, which was totally illegal under the treaty. Then, bam, March 1938, his troops just march into Austria. No one stops him. Britain and France are so desperate to avoid another war that they try this policy called appeasement. They basically give him a part of Czechoslovakia, thinking it'll satisfy him. But what happens? 6 months later, he just goes in and takes the rest of the country anyway. Appeasement was a total failure. But there was one guy who saw right through it, Winston Churchill. He wasn't prime minister yet, but he knew exactly what was going on. And his quote here, it just hits the nail on the head. He basically told them, you chose dishonor to avoid war, but you're going to get war anyway. He understood that by trying to dodge a conflict, they had only made a much, much bigger one inevitable. So at this point, appeasement is officially dead. It's over. All of Europe is just holding its breath. Everyone knows something is about to happen. They're just waiting for that final domino to fall. And it did, on September 1st, 1939. This was it, the line in the sand. 1 million German troops poured across the border into Poland. Britain and France finally said enough. They gave Hitler an ultimatum: pull your troops out or it's war. He ignored them, and 2 days later they declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun. But this wasn't going to be like the trench warfare of World War I. Not at all. Hitler had a terrifying new playbook. It was a strategy called Blitzkrieg, which literally means lightning war. And the name says it all. The whole point was to be so fast, so shocking, so overwhelming that you crush your enemy before they even know it hit them. We're talking about winning a war in days or weeks, not years. So how did it work? Simple. Step 1, speed and surprise. Hit them when they least expect it. Step 2, send in the tanks, the panzer divisions, to smash right through their defenses. Step 3, while they're reeling, the Air Force, the Luftwaffe, pounds them from above. The result? A lightning victory. It was pure, calculated shock and awe. Okay, now here's something you might not know, and it is genuinely wild. How did these soldiers keep up this insane, relentless pace? Well, many of them were given a drug called Pervitin. And you know what Pervitin is? It's basically an early form of crystal meth. It let them fight for days straight. No sleep, no food, no feeling tired. It gave them an absolutely terrifying edge. So after Poland falls, there's this weird, quiet period for a few months that people called the Phony War. But that all came to a crashing end on May 10th, 1940. Hitler turned his war machine west and unleashed the Blitzkrieg on France, Belgium, the Netherlands, all at once. It was a massive assault that completely caught the Allies off guard and trapped their main armies with their backs to the ocean. And the situation was, well, it was beyond desperate. You have almost 400,000 Allied soldiers, mostly British and French, stuck on the beaches of this little town called Dunkirk. The German army is closing in from all sides. It looked like it was over. It looked like the entire British army was about to be captured or wiped out. But then, something incredible happened. People call it the miracle of Dunkirk. A huge rescue mission was launched. And it wasn't just Navy ships. We're talking about fishing boats, yachts, ferries, anything that could float, piloted by civilians, crossing the English Channel while under constant attack. And against all odds, they rescued over 350,000 soldiers. Sure, they had to leave all their tanks and equipment behind, but they saved their army. And that meant Britain could live to fight another day. Now, even with that miracle at Dunkirk, let's be clear, the Blitzkrieg had been a terrifying success. In just a matter of months, Hitler had conquered Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France. He controlled almost all of Western Europe. The Nazi war machine seemed completely and utterly unstoppable. But one island nation was left standing, defiant. Was all of Europe falling at Hitler's feet, the new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, got up and gave one of the most famous speeches in history. He promised the world that Britain would never give in. They would fight on the beaches, in the streets, in the hills. They would never surrender. It was a powerful message to the world. This was just the beginning of the fight. And the struggle for freedom, no matter how desperate it looked, was far from over.